You are now listening to Renaissance Soul.
Welcome to the Renaissance Soul podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. And for this episode, I'm joined by designer, photographer, illustrator, film director, fashion designer, Mario Khalif Butterfield, to talk about the branding and marketing history behind Detroit hip-hop. We get into how he first found himself in the Detroit hip-hop scene as a designer and photographer, who he met, what he learned, and how he networked throughout the city. Once he got comfortable in his skills, he was able to help improve the visual aspects of Detroit hip-hop, starting in the mid-90s and advocating that the full product is important to a music artist. Mario Butterfield has designed a vast amount of album covers for Detroit hip-hop artists under his own name and under the skinnyboysgrafix company that he started with Waajeed. You've probably seen his work, and I have a bunch of examples in the show notes at freshthepodcast.com. He shared a lot of lessons he's learned about design and photography in this episode, and how he was able to implement it into all these Detroit classic hip-hop albums that we all love. You know, so many great stories are told in this episode because Mario was around, and he observed a lot. So we get a nice historical take of Detroit hip-hop from another perspective, from sort of a design, a marketing aspect. So, after a word from our sponsor, we'll get into this interview with Mario Butterfield. All right, welcome to the Renaissance Soul podcast, giving you another dose of Detroit music history. And my guest for this episode is a homie of mine, longtime friend, Mario Butterfield. Pretty much if you've ever seen a Detroit hip-hop album, if you've seen a lot of Detroit hip-hop albums, at one point or many other times, he probably did the graphic design, maybe even the photography, something in those album inserts, album covers or whatnot. He's been a big graphic designer, photographer, all around kind of jack of all trades when it comes to the look, the branding, the marketing of Detroit hip hop for 20, 25 years now. Yeah, we're old. So let me introduce you to Mario Butterfield. How you doing today?
Pretty good, man. Yeah, to add a little bit of clarity to that, we're probably going back to 94. I want to say safely when I first dug my hands into it and got going. It was real lo-fi at that point, but it still developed me as an artist on the scene.
That was like sort of a time when Detroit was kind of going through this transition of there's that first wave of Detroit hip hop with Detroit's Most Wanted, AWOL, Smiley, there's a whole bunch, Awesome Dre. And we're starting to see the seeds of all these other Detroit hip hop artists that would soon to be, this sort of global phenomenon, with the Eminems, the D12s, the, Slum Village, Dilla, Denon and everything. So, you were there kind of at the beginning of when like those little seeds were being planted. And what we're going to talk about today is sort of the marketing and the branding of this weird thing called Detroit hip hop that doesn't have exactly one little thing to it. So let's get into like your background and extend more on how you got into the scene.
Yeah. So like I said, so around that time, like even with mentioning there's this new wave of Detroit hip hop. Around that time was, I would say, the emergence of that, and that's kind of when I became kind of hip to it. And a lot of that is due to where I grew up, where I lived at the time. I lived on 7 Mile in Greenfield. So over there, fresh out of when I was like at 13 in 8th grade, maybe something like that. At 13 years old, I was working at Kingpin Airbrush, which was on the same block segment that the hip hop shop later would be on. So I worked at Kingpin Airbrush only because I hung around there and became like a kid nuisance to the owner. So,
isn't that how you got all your jobs?
Yeah, exactly. Like really. Yeah, I'm hanging out up there every day because I like art, and airbrushing was like a big thing at that point. This is like 92, 93.
Yeah.
Airbrushing is, everybody has it. You know what I mean? So he let me work up there, like sweeping and cleaning up the paints, and then he would give me like scrap material and like let me airbrush. So I learned how to airbrush up there. And from that, I started walking up and down 7 Mile and discovering these other situations. When I ran into Strictly Sportswear, which I did like some of my first actual logo work with their signs and stuff like that. And then from there was a record store where I met Riff from 12 Tech Mob. I ended up, meeting them, knowing them, stuff like that. That was the same time that I discovered the hip hop shop. Didn't discover it like I'm the founder or nothing, but that's when I stumbled upon it. You know what I mean? So I started. I got my first wow of that space when I saw Proof, and it was like I get off the bus. I'm coming home from school, get off the bus, and I see this guy with these huge overalls on and some Timberlands and this big messed up afro dreadlock looking thing. And, you don't see stuff like that in Detroit. You know what I mean? In 94.
Right.
So I'm looking at something that looks like out of a Right On magazine or, you know what I mean? Like Yo MTV Raps profile or something like that. And, I went to talk to him, and he explained to me what the hip hop shop was. Like, yeah, we're a clothing store, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And we have open mics on Saturdays. At that point, I'm a child who's rapping at the same time. I started rapping when I was 12, so I was already kind of like thinking I'm the best rapper in the world, because you got to think that, because rap is all ego, right?
Right.
So, and then speaking of Detroit's Most Wanted, I was rapping like in that area too. Like DJ Duncan Hines did cuts on like my first song. You know what I mean? Which was, so I was around like all of this weird stuff that I had no clue of. But when I met Proof and he told me about the battle situation, like they rapped and they battled and stuff. Now he didn't tell me they battled. I asked him, pretty cocky, like, so y'all battle up here? He's like, yeah, we battle. So I was like, all right, I'm coming. Be ready for me. So I'm calling out Proof at 14 years old, right? So the next week I go up there, tell my sister's homeboy about it. He's 5 years older than me. So he was already kind of in the hip hop world. So he kind of knew who Proof was. He just didn't know that that's who I was talking about when I was explaining it. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go battle this dude, man. This one guy. Couldn't remember his name. So I went up there, and my sister's friend went with me. He's like, I'm gonna go with you. So he go up there, and when it's my turn to rap, I'm rapping right at Proof, battling. And it's not nothing like battling right now. It's just showing that you could really rap. So I'm just rapping at him. And my sister's homeboy, his name is Natural, stands behind Proofs, and he understands, like, oh man, you're talking about Proof, and he's like giving me the don't do it signals and stuff, like stop. And I'm just going and going, and then after I did that, Proof rapped back at me my entire rap that I just rapped at him. Like he said, he reversed it to go back at me, but memorized the entire rap.
Wow.
And rapped it back to me. So I was mind blown. And after that, the impression of that made me come around every day. So I started skipping school every day to go hang out at the shop, right?
Yeah.
To the point where I knew I had clip art programs on my computer. So I had a computer and I had like these little clip art programs, and I would also type flyers. So if you understand like homemade flyers, like DIY flyers, you're doing 4 up on a page in which you cut in quarters. You get them copied at Kinko's or wherever, and you cut them in, quarters of 5.5 by 4.25.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm doing flyers like that, but the way I was doing them is I would measure out on a sheet of paper my 5.5 by 4.25 and draw the picture of what I wanted the picture of the flyer to be, and then type on a typewriter the information. So I would draw the graffiti headline, draw the picture of the character or whatever, then type all the rest of the information, copy that 3 more times or 4 times, and make it 4 up on a page to make a master copy, and go from there. And I did that for one of the open mics at the shop that Proof had me do. And he was like, oh man, like you can just do these. So I started doing hip hop shop flyers for open mics, right?
Yeah.
And Jerome, there's a guy, Jerome Mongo, who was the manager at the shop, part owner, and that was Maurice Malone's partner. I was hanging outside one day with Proofs, and I'm sweeping. I don't even work there, right? So I'm just sweeping, talking to Proof while he's standing out on the outside of the shop. And Jerome comes up to me, and Jerome, he sees I'm sweeping, but he knows I don't work there. So he asks Proof, he's like, man, who is this guy? Right? Because he talked like that. Like, he's like, man, who is this guy? So I looked at him, and I'm like, who are you? You know what I mean? Like, don't circle around me, ask me who I am. So he started talking. We started going back and forth at each other. I was real, man. I was adapted to this make-believe hardcore life. Like, in my mind, I was a thug, you know what I mean? But it was the dumbest concept ever, because I'm not a thug. So, but in my mind, that's what I was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm just talking to him like I'm about to like punch him in the face.
Whoa.
And then he's like talking back to me the same way, but he's 10, however many years older than me, right? So at the end of the conversation, he's like, you want a job? And just as aggressive, I'm like, yeah. So I ended up working at the hip hop shop, man. And from there, Proof introduced me to people, right? And so he's subconsciously showing me how to network. He's introducing me to people as the artist, the graphic designer, you know. So I'm like, oh, that's what you got to do. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of learning that this is what you have to do, right? So I'm meeting new people, DJs who are doing mixtapes, other people who might have like little businesses and stuff, so I can do branding work for them. Not even having an idea of what branding is, but I'm learning through just the ways of how it goes. And the one thing that really got me is I started doing these mixtape covers, and people would bring me photos to scan in, because of course you had to use a scanner back then.
Yeah.
You weren't grabbing pictures off of Google Image, you know what I mean? So
I
was telling somebody, like, my Google search when I first started was a stack of magazines that I had to find pictures of women or whatever and scan them in at a very high resolution to try to reduce the dots and all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it was so much trickery in doing this stuff. But
yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, it was weird, man. Trials and tribulations, huh? Man, we made business cards the same way we made flyers. Like, draw the picture, mock it up, put it up. At that time, you could do 30 business cards on a page.
Okay.
Something like that. So we would towel them up, and oh man, that was wild. That was wild. I got a lot of that stuff later on in life, a couple years down, from Waajeed, because we started a business, skinnyboysgrafix.
Yeah, Skinny Boys. Yeah.
Yeah, he showed me a lot of stuff. Well, he didn't purposely sit down and show me, but I would watch what he was doing and, take notes, because he's, an amazing artist. But yeah, back to the thing, man. Like, people would bring me photos for mixtape covers or, album covers and things like that, or flyers even. The thing about it was the photos super sucked. Like, the photos were the worst thing ever, and they would make the design suck because the photos sucked that bad. So that forced me to get into photography.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if I'm gonna do design work, I need to make sure that my design work isn't compromised by the majority of it being a sucky photo. You know what I mean? So I had to like pick up a camera and start like, learning photography. At that time, I was doing a lot of photography and stuff for Proof and T. Stuckey. I know you're familiar with that name.
Yeah.
T. Stuckey would have me come over almost all the time. I got pictures of him on my basement right now, just to like take candid snapshots of him set in his life, like just sitting around talking on the phone. Like he'll be on the phone like, hey, come get this picture. And at that time, my name was Dove. So you can imagine like somebody like talking real tough, like, hey, Dove, come get this picture. So, just doing the most basic, regular stuff. So I got real into photography from there. And then after that, after it felt like I was confident in being able to produce a finished product that looked good, the thing that really sparked at that point was in the hip hop shop, you're looking around. So let's say on a Saturday open mic, you look around and you see all these different rappers and producers, a couple singers. There was a guy named E-Pod at the time, who was one of the best producers ever out of Detroit, who would be in there with a trumpet, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, like this place is like a circus. You know what I mean? So you look around. Well, I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these different areas and corners of talent. And what I do is so separate. Like I was trying to rap, I was trying to do music and stuff like that, but that wasn't really where my actual mind was at. That's not where I was at. So I'm looking at myself like, man, like I'm kind of separate, like everybody's doing something audio wise. Everybody has a sonic mission. You know what I mean? I'm kind of separate when it comes to what I want to do. And when you listen to stuff like some of the first stuff I heard was like 5 Ella, out of that, out of that area, 5 Ella, IQ, Bugs, so I'm hearing some of the best rap to this day that you will ever hear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing that made me kind of feel like this is my mission is because the packaging didn't match the sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the sound was real good, and it's like, oh man, like this is good. This deserves a chance. But I know the consumer won't give it a chance if it doesn't look presentable.
Yeah, dude, there is some Detroit stuff that I passed on because of the packaging that I would later regret.
Right, exactly, man.
I'd be like, oh man, I saw that tape at Record Time, dog. What? Oh man.
Yep. I mean, nowadays it doesn't matter as much. I think Kanye broke a lot of the rules with that stuff.
Yeah, there was like this weird, like the meme culture went into to like packaging for music, and you're getting like sort of album covers that look like memes.
Right, yeah. Right now it's just a photo. It's not design anymore. It's just a photo, and a lot of times the photo doesn't have to have text on it. Yeah. There's not a requirement for wording. It can just be a photo and a parental advisory label, and that's it, and that's a cover. You know what I mean? So it's like so much less work put into it. But just like everything else, the market is so saturated with people who have the ability to do it easier.
Yeah.
The everyday consumer,
it's funny, like when you say back, that you were forced to get into photography, like I remember when I even started writing, for Real Detroit, nobody had good photos for print. So I had to learn how to even just use like a point and shoot, to actually have photos to go with my stories.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's
nobody had photos back then that you could use for print.
Man, those were some good days, man. Jeremy, he had me sidekick a few times, man. Like, jobs he couldn't make, cover photos and stuff.
Right.
And I used to be so excited. He'll call me like, "Hey, man, can you do this cover?" I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, "Yes, I get to do a cover."
Jeremy, like he does it all too. Like you kind of like you're always forced to do something else when you start doing one thing, when it comes to like the visuals and everything in like the music scene, especially here, because it was just like I remember back then, you would ask for a picture, and they would send you some low resolution thing that they had posted on MySpace or something.
Yeah, oh, so sucky, man. I learned so, even with that, like there's certain things that you just automatically know as an artist, not just graphic designer, but as an artist. So there's some low resolution photos that I've actually turned into high resolution photos through repainting or re-airbrushing those areas and redefining lines,
Yeah.
if it's that necessary to make it new again. You know what I mean?
Or
So there's
I just made the whole thing into like a lot of effects,
hmm
just to hide that it was a low resolution.
or just make it lower resolution.
Yeah.
Like kind of go with the flow. Like, you can't go against the grain on something that's that effed up. You know what I mean? Just make it what it is.
Or
It's
make it a
jacked up.
part of the thing. Like, I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Show more pixels. You can do that. Like if you lay text over it, like pixelize the text. Like
Right.
make that low resolution. Make it all a thing. But
So
yeah,
when
man.
you're at this point when you're like seeing all this talent from Detroit, but you're not seeing that their packaging is representation, like isn't representing the level that you're hearing from these artists. What you thinking at the time. What did you want to contribute to the scene?
That pretty much is it. Like I felt protective. You know what I mean? Like I felt real protective of what's capable, the potential of what can come out of Detroit. So I felt like I need to protect that. You know what I mean? And I felt like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't contribute the visual part to the whole game. And I had to insert myself real strong right there and say, hey, I can get real close to these industry quality covers. That's what my ads used to say. When I would post ads, they would say industry quality CD covers, industry quality cassette covers, because that was the whole thing, industry quality. Like, I tried to get people to think against local,
Yeah.
because that's what it'll end up being if they accept themselves as that, and to understand that in a business, well, with a self-contained, like if I was an artist, right, music artist, I know how to break down elements of myself to make that an all-inclusive business, to where I know which part of me should reach out this way to grab a marketing department, which part of me should do this for numbers, or
Yeah.
you know um but extending myself, like not trying to do it myself, you know what
Yeah.
I mean, because there's help, you know. And when you don't realize the help around you and you try to do it all yourself, it's just like with anything else, like you're gonna collapse the boat, you know what I mean? Like, you need help, you're gonna make yourself tired and sick, you're not gonna be able to focus on what you actually should be doing.
Yeah.
There's people that do photography, let them do that, you know what I mean? Like, don't, you can't do everything. And I watched that so much. So like I said, like a business won't have the CEO cleaning the bathrooms. Like,
Yeah. Right. Right.
there's help for that. You got to find out how to outsource all of what you need.
And this is during a time when in the hip hop industry, you're having all these iconic album covers. There's countless ones that you could see from 100 miles away or 100 yards
Yeah,
away, and you would know what that is. Mecca and
yep.
the Soul Brother, Hard to Earn. There's all these tons of these iconic album covers. And like the stuff that's coming out of Detroit was like definitely behind the times.
Super behind the times, man. That's later, like way later on. That's why what you just mentioned, I thought one of the most iconic album covers ever to me is Rage, Evil Empire, which is the reason why I did the Danny Brown hot soup. Exactly. I was like, man, this, I want to make this feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what hot soup is, and that was like the reason, because I'm like, I know what that is from the other side of the football field. I know
Yeah.
exactly what that cover is, and that's why I wanted to do the Danny Brown one, like that. But yeah, man, like there's even with and that's not just limited to album covers, but I try to explain that to people with with branding too. So their brand identity, their logo design. I mentioned to people like, man, like, do you understand this can't have a man standing in a b-boy stance with shell toes on, with a four-finger ring and all this weird stuff on, because once you take that down to the size of a dime, you're not going to know what it is.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a lot of those in Detroit.
Man, it's all of those. Like, it's so many. Even like I said, like the 12 Tech Mob logo that I did, I did their first logo, and it was pretty much that. It was like the needle was like, it was like a cartridge and needle, but it was made like a snake or something coming out of it. Was like too much stuff happening. But down the line, I did one of the things that helped me with that a lot, like a whole lot, is I presented probably 10 different logo concepts to Carl Craig for his subsidiary imprint, Antidote, at the time. So Antidote, he had a couple artists, like he had Tarak and Big Tone and a couple other people, but it was like his hip hop label from Planet E, And when I did his Antidote logo, I brought him like all these mind-blowing, super, this is the best thing in the world, right? And I bring him all these designs, and he was like, yeah, man, I just need it to be a real simple A that stands out. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I brought him back this A that was made out of like 3 bubbles. And I brought him that. He's like, that's perfect. And he paid me $1,500 for it. And you know what I'm saying? Like, right now, trying to get $1,500 for a logo is like, that's like, it's hard to get it's truthfully hard to get $150 for logo work, man. Like, it's pulling teeth. It's the most ridiculous thing to explain to people, the importance of their brand and why,
What were you trying to at this time trying to explain to all these Detroit hip hop artists about making something that can be easily remembered, like that brand, something a little bit more simple than the b-boy stance boy,
Well, one thing I always explain to people when it comes to branding is a lot of the tasteful things are only tasteful because they're trendy, and trends play out. So, when you act towards a trend, you're giving yourself a life limit at that point. You know what I mean? So you're allowing yourself to only survive while that trend exists. Like right now, if I was to do a logo or cover design of a character with skinny jeans on, for instance, you know what I mean? Like, no, I wouldn't do that. Like, that's not real when it comes to something that's supposed to hold longevity. That's not going to work. So I try to like advise people all the time, like, true enough, I can really do whatever people want. If I didn't care. So people can come to me all day and be like, hey, yeah, I want this guy with, his AirPods and his AirPods in his ear and skinny jeans on and this and that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. You know what I mean? But because I care and I can't stop myself from caring, I have to talk to people about this stuff all the time. Like, do you really want to do that? And circle around and give them other alternatives, because I know where that leads. And that's, that's a shortness of life pretty much, man. Like, you can't build a brand around a trend. And a lot of the stuff that I try to like explain to people with the album cover work is, it needs to look like, I'm not going to design a cover ever. Like, you can look in the history of my catalog. I'm never going to design a cover that doesn't look how the album sounds.
Yeah.
So that's the most important part. You know what I mean? And, sometimes people come to me and they aren't, being a little judgmental, they aren't the best musicians or artists. And I cheat and make the cover look a little better than what the music sounds. But yeah, man.
Right. You don't want your name to be like, yo, that shit's whack.
Right. And I feel like that's the dopest part. And if you were ever to see the behind the scenes work in progress of how I do stuff, you'll see a couple visits trashed because it doesn't mesh. You know what I mean? It doesn't it doesn't match up to the sound of it. You know what I mean? That happens a lot, and it's like, then I got to sit down and listen to the album. And a lot of times I suggest people send me like 3 to 5 songs off of like three to five of their favorite songs off of this album. I don't want to listen to the whole album all the time.
Yeah.
Not to, you know, just the sound or whatever, but I don't want to have to commit myself to sitting down for an hour just to get catch a vibe on doing a cover. So I just play a couple songs while I'm designing it a lot of times. And it automatically kind of bleeds into the mood of what I'm doing. It's kind of like with anything else. If you set the mood, you're going to reflect the mood. So,
going back to, like the mid 90s when you were first getting your feet wet into the Detroit scene, you're over at the hip hop shop. You're seeing this just zoo of artists, people that would, become mainstays in hip hop later on. There's all these different characters, different sounds or whatnot. Detroit doesn't necessarily have that sound, like the West Coast sound, the Oakland sound, the New York sound, the down south sound. We have our own kind of thing, How do you sort of, brand like hip hop like that, when you're getting all these different types of vibes, when you just, like you just said, you want to make these covers, these artworks that really vibe with the music, how do you sort of like keep that open-mindedness and that sort of creativity when there isn't like a
dedicated sound,
like a dedicated sound to it all?
Yeah, it's I really don't know, man. I guess that's almost a gift, because at that point it becomes like a chameleon talent, where you have to be able to adapt to all of these people, and you don't get a chance to necessarily have a signature look. So at that point, you kind of, as an artist, you compromise having a signature look to be able to cater to all of these different things. If I was to have a signature look, of course, doing something like that, a lot of the music would need to be kind of similar, like how you mentioned, like the West Coast, East Coast stuff. Like Detroit is kind of a pot of gumbo, man. Like it's all over the place with the sound. Like you can get some real grimy stuff. You can get some real polished, clean stuff. You can get there was a certain point in time where you could get something that's almost sounded Southern. Like you can get
right.
A lot of different things, real soulful stuff. So it's that's something, man. I honestly don't even know how to answer that, man. I guess you just step out of your body and try to mesh with whatever that artist is, and
how do you feel like Detroit artists were able to sort of gain any sort of popularity when you don't have that sort of basis of a sound to sort of go after, when you see like the East Coast, the West Coast, down south, whatever, being able to like ride on a little bit of a formula, but Detroit really doesn't have that. How do you feel like Detroit was able to sort of brand themselves individually to be able to become what it's become?
Time. I don't feel like they were able to, and that's what seemingly took so long. You know what I mean? Because it's a game of patience at that point, because it's not going to happen immediately, because there's nothing really identifiable about it for people to be excited about it. You know what I mean? People on the outside looking in, it's just like awkward music. You know what I mean? Like it's real awkward. And then at the same time, we aren't always extending ourselves to be receptive to feedback. So we don't always know what people are liking, when on the other end of the fence, there's somebody in Mississippi playing, who Big Herc the whole time. We just never knew it. You know what I mean? Because we aren't extending ourselves to be able to take this type of information back in.
Why do you think that was so? Like, why do you think there was such like apprehension to like really extend themselves out beyond local for a while?
Because we don't politic. There was a lot a time where we didn't really politic with too many situations outside of us. So we're kind of like, all we got is us. We stick together. You know, we don't have to reach out. Um, and we talked about this on our phone conversation when I was just talking. We were talking about the United States and the art of travel.
Explain that again, because that was very interesting.
Yeah, so this came up in a conversation with Maurice Malone and myself back when I was a teenager, and it was just talking about the separation of Detroit. So being in Michigan and having a full protection of a body of water, Great Lakes, you can, versus everywhere else, you can mistakenly travel from point A to point B anywhere in the country and go through other parts. So coming from Detroit going to Atlanta, you go through all these places, Tennessee, whatever, wherever, you know what I mean? So you experience, even if you don't stay there, just going through there, you get some type of an experience of it. So you're kind of more adjusted to it. You know what I mean? But you can't do the same thing you can't just go through Detroit. So going to Detroit, you have to go there purposely on a regular travel or a regular just maneuvering around. So I feel like every other place gets more of an opportunity because they're more, people are more receptive to other places because they get a chance to experience them. So it's not such an awkward taste when they do get it. You know what I mean? Because they're already kind of okay with it because they've experienced something about it, whether it was the accent, whether it's how the lady treated you at the Cracker Barrel, or, like whatever it is, you get an idea of how this place maneuvers. Like there's certain places where you go to, we go to Alabama, we're like, oh, we got to hurry up and get out of here. You know what I mean? Because we got an understanding of how you get treated there, or, you don't get that in Detroit. So when people come to Detroit, they're there on purpose, which is pretty awkward. So it's in that breath, it's also just as hard for a city like Detroit to be discovered because you have to purposely go there. You're not mistakenly going through there. You don't trip over it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that lessens the chance of the discovery part. So when it comes to like all these undiscovered talents and stuff, it's because people aren't really checking for Detroit because it's nothing that people have a taste for. You know what I mean? Like until you decide that, hey, we got to get aggressive and we have to take Detroit to these places, which only happened, a lot of times on special occasions, which were Jack the Rapper's Impact conferences, Freaknik, like it had to be a reason. Like people weren't just openly going and taking Detroit places. They had to go party with some place in order to do it. So, it made I guess the hustle of moving music around kind of laxed. You know what I mean? Because we always waited till there was a special reason to do so instead of just aggressively doing it. And then I believe after small taste of things happen, and if you look at the track record of some of those tastes, so we'll talk about like Eminem or Slum Village or Royce or all of that stuff kind of happened out of the city, through chain of events. It's like out of the city. Like Q-Tip hears about Slum at Lollapalooza, or Dre hears about in California, or but it had to be kind of like pushed in those directions. So it's still not necessarily saying this person was here in Detroit experiencing this. We had to kind of push it out to them. But you can go to, and it has, I feel like it has a lot to do with radio too. At those times, like we weren't really, still aren't the most supportive to ourselves. But you know
Right.
that's been a big complaint for decades, man. You go any place else, you go to Miami, wherever you go, you're gonna hear that music, and that's all you're gonna hear.
Man, I remember when I was a family vacation. Actually, there's two family vacations we went. One time we went to Hawaii. Another time we went to Las Vegas. Las Vegas was probably '98. I
How old were
remember.
you when you went to Hawaii and Las Vegas? How old were you
Oh,
when you went to
I
Hawaii?
was I was I was underage, so I really couldn't really
You just
like.
went on. You were just a part of the family. You weren't. It wasn't for you.
No, it wasn't. I remember when we were in Hawaii though, because that was the day that Slim Shady LP came out. So we were out there in February of '99, and but the funny thing was when we were out in both Hawaii and Las Vegas, their radio stations were playing local music. Like
Yeah.
to the amount where I could tell that they were playing local music, like only being there a couple days and hearing it multiple times that they were playing local artists.
Yeah. And that's I think that's something that spreads too. So in the same breath where Detroit doesn't experience other places, we never knew that that's what you were supposed to do. Cuz we aren't, picking up the hints from these other places cuz we don't experience these other places. But
Right.
yeah, that album was a big turn of my my stomach, man. That the Slim Shady joint. He told me we were in St. Andrews and as soon as you walk in Drews past the security, like the
Yeah.
corridor part,
Yeah.
we're standing the lobby, we're standing right there, and he had just got back to Detroit from going out to Cali to meet Dre and have the meeting and all that stuff. And he comes back and I see him and he's like, I'm like, yo, and he's like, Dub. And I'm like, he's like, man, you still do design? I'm like, yeah. And this is the part where I can like load a gun and like blast myself. But he's like, yo, I need two logos. I need one for Slim Shady, one that says Slim Shady, and one that says Shady Records. And I'm so used to, so I'm resistant against anybody telling me we're going real far and we're taking you with us, right?
Yeah.
Or you're gonna blow up because we're taking you with us. I'm real resistant against that at this point because that's all I was getting from everybody, right?
Oh, that time. Oh,
Yeah, I
there was
fought
a
against
lot
that
of that
so
going
hard.
on.
Yeah, and I fought against it so hard, man. So when he tells me this, and he actually gave me a mailing address to a lady to mail the drafts to,
Yeah.
because we weren't emailing at that time. so, so he gives me a mailing address, and he's like, "When you finish them, send them here." And it was a California address to the one of the ladies over there, and I just never did it. And then the next thing I know, I'm watching "Hi, My Name Is" video, and it's like, that sucks. I just never did it, man. And that was, that was the whole. Like I said, man, I've been so resistant against putting so much effort into somebody's dream
Yeah.
because it's like, man, like, no, man, I've heard this story. I can tell you, I can say this story while you're telling me. Like, I can tell you exactly what you're about to tell me. Like, I've heard it that many times. So I just fought against it every time I heard it, man. And that was like one of the bigger disappointments of it.
What were some of your, favorite designs that you ever did for Detroit hip hop?
Big Herc, Guilty as Charged cover. Oh man, that was so good. It was good because I stole a camera from my job I was working at the time. I stole it. It was a medium format. I stole that and used it to shoot the photos. And I did a double exposure photo. It wasn't design edited. It was in camera double exposure where I used a filter card to block off half of it, shot the other one with another filter card, and it came together perfectly. And I didn't have to do any real design work to it to make it look like a double exposure.
Oh, nice.
Basically, it's him walking around a corner of a liquor store, and then it's him on the other side of the wall of the liquor store about to rob himself. Um, Yeah, I was very happy with that. That one, Black Milk Popular Demand was one of my favorites too.
That's a good one.
Simply because I had fabricated this whole concept of, yeah, I'll make them a tour bus and I'll put a tour bus and it'll be wrapped with black milk and all this stuff. But that was me doing my used car sales pitch where I'm just making up stuff and just saying it just so I can get the job. So,
right.
Even though Black the whole time, man, was very loyal to working with me. So since his first project, Sound of the City, which I was also real happy to do because his sound was so good. And we just came off of the D12 World Tour. This was 2004. And we came off of that tour. Me and Black were on that same tour together as Slum Village. We were roadies with Slum Village, and I did their images, their visuals for their shows. So when we came off of that tour, at that time he was Black Milk, BR Gunna. He was juggling in between. But we came off of that tour and he was like, "Yo, I want to do an album, and can you help me out with the cover?" And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely. Like, your music is awesome." So we did that, and then 5 covers down the line or whatever, we just wrote the whole way. You know what I mean? And every time it's like the Tronic, the album of the year, the popular, like everything. He's like, "Yo, I got another one. I got another one." And the thing that was like exciting about doing all of Black's covers were my favorites, actually. I'll just say that.
Oh yeah, they're all good.
The thing that was exciting about doing work with Black Milk is, a lot of people who can vouch for this. He's hands down the most progressive artist out of the city.
Yeah. I will agree with that.
Yeah, everything was better than the last. Like he learns more, he does more, he experiments, and each one is going to be a whole different avenue. You know what I mean, of music, and you can tell, and it makes the artwork that much more exciting, because we go from Sound of the City to Popular Demand, and it's a different sound. It's bigger. He's more comfortable with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so we can make it more bigger, which we did. Popular Demand is a cocky title, so we got paparazzis on there, the tour bus and all that stuff, and made it all it can be. Then we go to Tronic, and it's like, dude, this is electric. So now we're dealing with a hologram cover, and we're like, but it's the concept of making it match. Album of the year, he cleaned up a whole lot. It got real, it's a lot older. You know what I mean? Like, he's more mature with it, and the cover is just as simple, just to say 365. Like, it doesn't need anything because it's kind of already proven. Like, he's done enough to prove that he knows what he's doing, and he matured with it. The cover moved along with that, and it all made sense, man. So yeah, all of his covers have been like my favorites, man. Geez, man, it's so many, man. I've done so many album covers, like.
I know, dude. We all know.
Yeah, man, like so many, man. I think the what am I saying here? The Slum Village, they're one of their last ones with Baten. This is way after the fact of a lot of Slum Village stuff, but the Villa Manifesto album, I felt real attached to that, even though I don't feel like visually it's my best work by far.
Yeah.
But just the importance of it, I felt real attached to, because that was the last time the cover had been pitched to a couple people and stuff. And I didn't want it to be bad, or not even bad, but not slum. I didn't want it to be anything that wasn't representative of slum. You know what I'm saying? So, because it was like, to me, I'm like, this is Baten. Baten's on here. You know what I mean? And that was real important to me. I'm like, Baten is on here. He has to go out with class. You know what I mean? Like, this is possibly the last time people will hear him on a Slum Village album. so it has to be classy. And I tried to like do, something real classy. There's a tiled image. I've made like a pattern, almost like a Louis Vuitton kind of thing, and I tried to like, put class in it, man. Because I'm like, this whole cover is because of Batin. That's the only reason, I wanted to control doing it, and I didn't want anybody else doing it because I didn't trust it.
Yeah.
So I really held that one close. The Danny Brown cover, man, because of the story of it.
Yeah.
The Hot Soup album, solely because of the story of it, man. We went through a lot of stuff with that. We actually set up an assembly line at Nick Speed's crib, man, and put all of those CDs together too.
Yeah, I was around during those times, like helping out with other things.
Yeah, man. So that was a fun one, and just knowing Danny and knowing his story made me more excited about working with him at the time, because just seeing like, I go pick him up at his house, and I got to come in and wait on him to get dressed and stuff, and watching his relationship between him and his moms, and like just how everything worked. It was just like, dude, this is crazy, man. Like, you live a different life.
Right, exactly. Like it doesn't take it did not take that long to realize that dude was like totally different.
Yeah.
Than anybody else that we know in the city.
It's crazy, man. And like stuff like that, you as an artist working with an artist, I get to use that and put it into what I'm doing for him. You know what I mean? One of the more recent covers that I did was for T3, Mr. Fantastic, that I felt when I did that one, I honestly felt like I ran out of the juice, because I'm like, what else do you do? Like, because like I said, like now covers are just photos. Sometimes they got text on them, sometimes they don't, but It's that simple. So it's like, in my mind, I'm like, what do I do? So I picked up a canvas and painted a cover. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, I forgot I know how to paint. So I was like, I can paint a portrait, and I painted, but that took me someplace else where I felt like I was forced to go. So,
like, you've kind of mentioned this a couple of times, where like the artist as a person really lent to your side of things, working on their album covers. Like, how important is it for the artists themselves to sort of open up a little bit to their team to be able to accurately, make these visuals that represent the music that they're making?
Well, I think that's important all around. It's not even, I don't even think it's an artist or a creative thing. I just think working with a team, period, you want to develop trust. You know what I mean? And opening up is that's a trust component. You know what I mean? So once you do that, I feel like it's automatically I automatically feed off of that, and I can, if I'm able to know you, then I don't have to try as hard. I don't have to try to figure it out. It's given to me, so I can just exhale whatever I just inhaled. You know what I mean? And give it, push it right back out, versus trying to figure it out and trying to dig. And people can make it complicated for people, or you can actually like get inside and like, ironically, man, well, not ironically, but yeah, I have personal friendships with pretty much all of whoever I've done work for. Like, like pick up the phone and call and talk about Thanksgiving. You know what I mean? Like, just regular stuff with all of the people I've done work for. And that's because I don't just treat it as, well, yeah, send me 2 photos and I'll have your cover tomorrow. I can't treat it like that. You know what I mean? I can't treat it. So people are involved in my process, and in turn, I guess that develops trust because I'm letting them inside. You know what I mean? So they probably show trust back, and then it just keeps on building together.
Yeah.
And it becomes a thing. But yeah, like I have great friendships with like all of them. And like I told you, like I get a random text, or I might text, or like from payroll or whoever, like, how's everything over there? You know what I mean? Just a regular, normal human question. You know what I mean? Like, y'all all right? Stuff like that. Like, or it's crazy. Like, well, it's not crazy. It's how it's supposed to be. Like,
it's how it's supposed to be. The music stuff kind of brings us together, but it's other things that, like, develop friendships.
Yep.
So, like, a bit, a thing about Detroit, has been, like, the fashion of Detroit. East Side and the West Side has their own little, unique looks. Maurice Malone was a part of, brought out the hip hop shop. How did sort of the fashion of Detroit lend itself to the look of hip hop that's, would come out of Detroit, and, like, they would, represent these artists worldwide?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You hear different stories. I've heard stories back in the mid 90s, earlier 90s, that the whole Coogee sweater thing came from Detroit. So people come here and they pick up little things and they take it with them. I've heard stories about
and that kind of lends itself to the traveling thing, where, you go to Detroit, but, like, people are not going to stumble upon it, so you can go to Detroit and kind of lift some things, and no one's really going to stumble upon Detroit.
Kind of, and because Detroit didn't move around like that, nobody would ever know that it was originated in Detroit. Nobody here is
there's no internet or social media back then. So nobody's, like, calling anybody out.
Kind of, man. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, it's some one thing that I do like, man, is I really enjoy the flashiness of Detroit. The Cardis, and everybody has a Rolex and stuff, and
right.
I really like that, because through fashion and through possessions, it shows the mentality. It shows what these people are thinking, which is, I don't care if you have 5 chains and a Rolex. Like, me and my whole crew got 5 chains and a Rolex. So what are you saying? And that's the concept of Detroit. Like, they don't care that much. They don't care what you got. They don't care how much money you got, because the average person has just as much money. You know what I mean? The average person just next door probably has the same amount of money that Lil Bootsy or whoever is holding up on their Instagram picture. So it doesn't really mean anything. It's hard to impress somebody from Detroit because they have it. They just aren't publicized with it as much as, some people. So you can't really get to them. And I like that part of it. And that's reflected real heavy through fashion and possessions. I love that, man. That's one of my things. Like, even right now, watching the whole Cartier thing happen, where everybody has, like, a pair of Cardis. Like, everybody. Like, you look at Floyd Mayweather or all these basketball players, whoever, and they all have them. And you want to know the best thing about that is, if you rewind back to speaking of album covers, this one I didn't do, but I like it. If you rewind back to the Slum Village Trinity cover and look at Baten's face and the glasses he's wearing back in 2001.
That was 2002, 2001. Yeah.
Yeah. Baten's wearing Cartiers with a turban on and holding,
right.
and holding incense.
Yo, that is like, Baten is so Detroit.
Yeah, that happened. That happened way before any of these people thought about doing that.
That was so Baten, and now it's like so Detroit that, like, all those things would be like, one person would do all those things.
Yeah, Baten had a collection, man. He had Cazelles and Cartier frames, but this is like I said, 2001, 2002, man, and it's on the album cover. Like you can't mistake this. You know what I mean? And just knowing that, and then, but at the same time, speaking of the mentality of it, if you go back and listen to how suave he was, man, and how like glamorous he talked, like that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like it's a real lavish kind of statement. You know what I mean? And if you have it, you can show it. That's what they're gonna do. They're gonna show it every time. That was some good stuff. By 10, man. So yeah, all you Cardi people, you can thank Titus Glover for showing you the way. That's awesome, man. Yeah, man. The album cover stuff, man. That's one thing that I never thought I would get caught into, like or pigeonholed into. Self-inflicted, because this is where I wanted to stay. But it's something I never thought of, man. I always wanted to do movie posters. Like I always had this concept of doing, like, when you go to the movies, well, you don't go to the movies now because we can't. But when you go to the movies and you see big displays, built, like stuff like that was like mind blowing to me. Because it would still match the DVD cover and the movie poster, but they would be like the DVD cover, the poster, and the display and billboard would be all from the same elements, but different like structures of it.
Yeah.
So it'd be slightly different. Maybe a different photo from the same photo shoot or something like, but it'll be the same thing. And it's like, man, that is amazing. And it always, like, that was one thing that was always stunning to me was that. So yeah, but I kind of did the reduced part of it and kept it to CD covers.
So you've always been somebody who, and we were talking about this on the phone the other day, where you're almost like a fly on the wall to a lot of things in Detroit hip hop history and whatnot. You observed a lot. What were some of the biggest lessons about, just Detroit hip hop and about how this thing kind of moves that you learned over all those years?
Man, a couple of the bigger things that I've learned and watched was the back end side, like the business side, the marketing side, the how to put this stuff together and make it work with the rest of the race in the industry. I got a lot of that stuff, like I mentioned, Waajeed, because he has a very structured mind, and he's an artist. So with those two blended, me at 16 years old at the time, I guess, is when we started skinnyboysgrafix. I was 16, 17, something like that. But just watching how he did things, man, I got a lot from that. I got a whole lot from that, actually, as far as like the first, let's say the first Slum Village cover, the volume 1. That whole cover is a Kinko's run. Like that's printouts on label paper, cut out, label, like everything. And he got it down to the circular seal. There's a little circular, like a 1-inch diameter circle seal that closes the tape that has the SV logo. Well, it's not the logo, it just says SV on it, but that seals the tape. Just the whole concept of how to make this different, because with a normal cassette, you had a J card that goes inside the cassette like an insert, of course, and it's called a J card because from the side it forms a J if you look at it from the side.
Yeah.
So instead of doing that, which would be the standard concept, he took a blank cassette case and put a sticker on top of it, cut out to the size of the case, which was the cover. So the cover wasn't something you could remove because it was a sticker stuck on top of it. And then on the inside, there's this card thing, like a business card that looks like a menu, but it's the playlist. So you have this card that you can take out, and it only has the playlist, not the cover on it, because the cover is a sticker on the front.
Right.
Then on the actual cassette, there's cassette labels. So there's 2 sticker labels on the front and the back that are also printed at Kinko's. and put on this thing, and then it's sealed with the little clear sticker. So watching that made me really fight to make anything happen. You know what I mean? Like, just, against the grain type of thinking at that point. Because I'm like, oh man, like there is no structure or not structure, but there's no way to do creativity. There's no direction for it. There's no guideline or recipe for it. You know what I mean? Like, you do it however you feel appropriate with whatever you're doing it with, like or for. So there's no way. So seeing that, and then watching the follow-ups, like we worked on QD Quite Delicious cassette, and with that one it was like a step up because we ordered the inserts, which were J cards, and then we still did the Kinko's run for the print for the cassette, the actual on cassette labels, which were purple. Okay. But the actual cassette was yellow. So it's like, so, and the yellow and the purple, the label for the cassette being purple, going on a yellow, all yellow cassette, matched the lights from the photo on the cover, which were taken at Trapper's Alley down in Greektown. So it had yellow and purple lights and stuff. It was like the most weird way to watch this stuff happen in a DIY kind of way. You know what I mean? So It's like, man, there's no real way to, do this, man. You just do it however you feel appropriate for whatever you're doing it for. I watched that, and then I watched RJ Rice with a lot of the slum stuff. So RJ would call me up to the office. Mario, come up here, man. I need you to look at something.
Come on, man. There. Come on, Mario. Yeah. Come on, Mario.
Come on, I just need you to look at something for me.
I need you to look. Come on. Can you come out today? Come on.
Yeah, I go up there, man, and he showed me like the Detroit Deli cover or some athletic Mike League stuff or whatever was being worked on at the time. Right. What you think about this, Mario? I'm like, I think it's dope, Jay. Are you just saying that because I'm asking you? I was doing like that. I mean, to be honest, that whole time kind of pissed me off because I'm doing so much hands-on consultation work when I could just actually be doing the cover work. You know what I mean? So
and there were some buns-ass covers during that time.
Yeah. So that time was a struggle, and I was only doing it. That's when dedication and loyalty are like a gift and a curse, because it's like, these are my brothers, man. So I gotta make sure they stuff look right. But I'm not really equipped to think business wise. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like giving away my time,
right?
For the sake of those relationships we spoke about. But yeah, that's I did learn a lot from RJ in regards to that stuff, which is getting it right. You know what I mean? Just even though that's subjective, but
yeah.
But taking the time to get it right, because it has to be seen, and then once you open the gates and it's out there, it's out there. You don't pull it back and redo it. It's out there, so you got to get it right. You know what I mean? And that's the reason why I was saying, like, I trash stuff a lot, man. So when people see album covers come from me, that might be the fourth version they see. You know what I mean? And I'll act like it's the first. Just like,
oh yeah, I just
knocked that out, man.
I just knocked that out last night. I was even half asleep.
Yeah, I was taking a shower, man. I
did while I was taking a shower. Shoot. Yo, what's some of the worst album covers that you look back and you're like, I really wish I didn't do that?
Ooh,
I can name one that I already know you don't. That's the house shoes I got next.
Oh, with the gun outside with the arcade, arcade gun. I hated that cover. I'll take it back. I love that cover when I first did it because it was funny.
Right.
Not because it was dope. Because it was funny, I loved it. And at that time, funny is what I was going for, because at that time, you got to think, you got King Gordy over here. You got, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, gimmick. I'm with the gimmicks. I'm with King Gordy. I'm with Fat Killers. I'm, you know, so like, oh man, this is funny. So then I look back at it and I'm like, that wasn't really funny, man. That pretty much sucked. I hated that one. I hated the Black Milk and Fat Ray one.
Okay.
I hated that cover. I loved it when I first did it, and I loved it when I first thought it, not when I first did it, but when I first had the concept of how I was going to do it. They came over to my mom's house, and we shot the photo in her storage in the basement of her apartment building in the storage area. And I was like, oh man, it's going to be dope. It's like these pipes and the HVAC system, and it looks all weird. And then I did it, and I was like, oh man, that sucks. But you know, you got to follow through with it. So I was like, that sucks. That sucked. What else sucked? There's some sucky ones out there, man. Jeez, you put me in a pickle.
When you're sort of, when you've become this, you know, person who's helped out so many people with, you know, packaging their product, you know, these album CDs and stuff, and how do you sort of, you know, what's the creative process usually like? Because, you know, I definitely, you know, had some experience where people want something, but they don't really know, like, other ideas. They don't really know the kind of ins and outs of making that happen. So what's sort of the back and forth with, you know, trying to get people to really understand what needs to be done?
Well, the first thing is to find out if they're scared to spend money or not. Like, you know what I mean? Like if they actually have a concept of what stuff costs.
Yeah.
Because people, you know, there was a long period of time where people were coming to me because they wanted, after they saw the Jay Dilla Welcome to Detroit cover. I didn't do that, by the way. I don't want people to,
right.
But yeah, after they saw that, it was a digipack. I think it was like a 6-panel digipack, and then it folded and it had a magnet closure. So there was a magnet that closed it, and then it went inside of another sleeve. And people come to me with these ideas to do stuff like that without understanding this is manufactured. This isn't a standard digipack.
Right.
This is created just for this project. So, you know, you got to kind of walk people through the process of, you just can't say I want this and think that it's going to cost the same as a jewel case CD insert situation. So once we get a picture painted with their budget, I know where I can go and where I can't go with it. So I'm not like a real estate agent where they show you these fantastic homes that they know you can't afford just to reel you in, to make you compromise your budget for, you know what I mean? So if people have a budget of whatever they have, I find out what's safe in that and only present that, you know what I mean? Because I know that a lot of these artists don't have a lot of extra money because I know they're doing it on their own, you know what I mean? So to me, it's kind of, I'm not in the take advantage game, you know what I mean? So I try to respectfully stay real close to what people can realistically do. You know what I mean? Even with a lot of my services now, man, like I'll tell people, like, you know, like if it's somebody close to me and I understand, here's one thing. Okay. This is, this is one thing that I know we all go through as creatives. With creatives with clients, I'll say, you have some clients that have the big stacks of money that they keep with them, and they have the Cardis and they drink the rosé and stuff. Those are the ones that you'll always have the hardest times with. Those are the ones who, you know, they want to counter everything that you mentioned price wise. And then you have the person that you know for a fact is having a hard time paying their cell phone bill. But for whatever reason, this is the person who will come up with whatever price you give them without trying to, you know,
right,
come up with a different price. Like I can tell somebody, hey, this is going to cost this much. all right, man, I'll get it to you. And they'll figure out how to do it, and they'll do it. And then the other person with the excess money to spare, oh man, you can't do it for this much, or you can't. I was like, this sucks, man. This whole thing sucks. But yeah, man, I try to, but that comes through connection too. That comes through like the friendship part, the knowing this person opening up. You can read that situation. You know what I mean? So the people who I know don't have it or aren't close to, their dreams, I definitely work with them, and I'll try to create solutions for them to do it a doper way. Or if they can save money, you know what I mean? Like, dude, you don't need to do 1,000 CDs right now. Do 300 and use some of the other money for posters and flyers or whatever. Well, people don't do that now, but that would be an ideal suggestion. Just things that I know could help them out. You know what I mean? So try to come up with different stuff. It's like that with like video work too, man. Like, so we haven't spoke on it, but I, do video work, and I try to, it's real. It's so hard to work with people, man. Like, it's very, very hard to work within people's expectations because of the saturated market. So you have the person that just got out of college or around that age who, they catch a whiff of what's going on. And because of the turn of times and stuff, all these technology companies, Canon and all these computers and stuff, make these. Back when I first started doing photography, my first film camera cost $1,500. You know what I mean? And it's like, now you could get a digital camera for $300 or whatever, decent enough to do something with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the same with computers. Like, they're so like everything is so dirt cheap, and they come with so much. So you got computers coming with editing software and all this stuff. So it becomes a hustle for the newcomer person. You know what I mean? So that becomes a fight when it turns into me having to not compromise myself for what I know I'm capable of doing to try to stay in a race with somebody who just decided that they wanted to do this. And it's like, dude, come on, man. I've literally been doing this before you were born. And those years add up to value. You know what I mean? Like, that adds on to my value. It should never depreciate because I'm learning more and I'm rightfully doing a better job as I get older with it. You know what I mean? So it should never have to depreciate, but because of all this, it has to depreciate. And it's like,
right.
And I want to get all these. I want to get all the graphic designers, photographers, video editors in one room and kind of have a seminar and just explain to them that if they didn't, like, say for instance, I charge $1,000 for a logo, right? They charge $50 for a logo. Okay. The only reason it's hard for me to make $1,000 off of a logo is because they're charging $50, but they're probably doing the same amount of work as me, time-wise and effort-wise, in which case they should be charging $1,000 a logo. And at that point, the consumer wouldn't have a choice but to pay $1,000 for a logo.
Yeah.
But because you're giving them this very, very low choice, that cuts me out. You know what I mean? Instead of, especially with video editors, video directors, things like that, $200 for a video blows my mind, right? And the thing that blows my mind about it with a lot of them is they're doing decent work. Like, they're doing, it should be way more than. I'm like, dude, like, you should charge. I've been on shoots where I've paid somebody $200 just to do lights, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or catering or makeup, or like, you're charging $200 for the whole thing. Like, I wouldn't even, that's the cost that it takes for me to unload and load equipment. You know what I mean? Like, but because they're doing that, it makes me feel like they don't understand their worth and the talent of it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, there's a lot of that going on in all sorts of artistry, where yeah, there's people that don't know their worth, and they're just trying to straight up undercut other people, and everybody should be charging more because that's what their talent is worth.
Yeah, I don't think they're undercutting. I really think it's more of a case where they don't understand their
Yeah.
worth
Yeah,
or
there's a
what
lot
it
of
should
people
be.
that just don't understand their worth, and like sometimes and yeah, they might have a lot, they might be doing a lot of work, but that's because they're talented and they have a low price.
Hmm.
They could charge more, maybe lose some clients, but they would have more time to themselves.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're doing it's the concept of doing 30 videos for $100 versus doing one video for $3,000. Like it might take you a lot longer to find that one client at $3,000, but in that time you have like you're not breaking your face to edit all day and all night these other 30 videos. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're scoping out finding this one that's worth it. And besides that, just the low ball end of like the low end of editing, I would say, like I charge like let's say $75 an hour, just to throw that out, right? A nice edit is going to take 10 hours. So just on an edit alone, that's $750. That doesn't involve the 8 hours, 8+ hours of shooting, which should also be, I'll throw a number of $75 out an hour. So you're you know what I'm saying, like you're not even fitting in the low standard of things. And that part is aggravating. I get that with I gave somebody a price for a single cover, because of course that's real popular now, like the single art, like people,
Yeah.
that's all they release now are singles. uh and I gave somebody the price of my price for that, and they're like, man, I'd get videos done for that price. And I'm like, why? Like, who's doing this? Which makes me think, so in a world of like if I was a part of the Navarro cartel, I would instead of me trying to lowball people, I would hire these people who are doing videos for $200 and still charge a very low price of $500 and not have to do anything. You know what I mean? Like I can very well like find some designers that'll do single covers for $35 or however much they're doing them for, add my price on, and I'll never have to do design work again at the rate that these designers are going, because people still come to me. I still have frequent very frequent workload. You know what I mean? So I can put all this stuff off on people, but it'll never work like that because people want my work.
Yeah. So throughout all these years since you first entered the Detroit hip hop scene, you know, going into today, how do you feel like the sort of the brand of Detroit hip hop, the look, the whole package of Detroit hip hop has evolved during those times?
um, it's a two-way street, man. I feel like it's half and half. Like I feel like half of it has just turned out to be blah, because these are the people who take their destiny in their own hands, like I mentioned, and they do all of their stuff because it's accessible now.
Yeah.
They don't, they'll ask me, man, what camera are you shooting with? And it's like, why? Like, why? Why does that ever matter? Because they want to buy one for themselves. That's the only reason. They're not grading you or evaluating you. They want it for themselves so they can do it, because they feel like the camera does the work. And then when they get it and they realize the camera doesn't, well, they never realize the camera doesn't do the work, which is odd to me because they don't see the difference in quality. So
Right.
they end up doing stuff on their own and they think it's just as good just because they have the same equipment. Man,
Yeah.
what you edit with? And it's like, I edit with Lightroom. all right, sweet. So I need to get Lightroom. Like, it's not gonna make a difference. But this is what they think. So they do that and they carry on, and then that side of the fence kind of depletes. The other side, I feel like, picked up a lot, man, and became its own world of um of art, man, of visual art. Like, because while there's like these overnight, I can do it on my own, hustler style designers and photographers and stuff. There's also overnight actual artists, you know what I mean, who just never had a chance to have that influence. But because it's so popular now, like because everybody's a street artist, there's a lot of street artists because everybody's a muralist or, some type of designer or something. It doubles the odds of influence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it makes more of a crowd that could possibly influence other people. So some people catch an actual influence and they realize, that part of themselves in truth. So it's not a hustle or just, I caught a bug of what people are doing, so I want to do it too.
Yeah.
It's them actually realizing themselves, and they tap into it early and they become real good at it. So like I said, it's like half and half. It's half the other story, then it's half that, where you have actual artists blossoming from experiencing other artists. So it's a good thing and a bad thing. Like, I think it's working, man. I think people are way more, I mean, just in general, man, because of times and social media and stuff and accessibility, people are more, they feed off of themselves. So the more they can do stuff, like back in our days, we couldn't just record a song because it took $15 an hour to record a song.
Yeah.
We had to pay studio time and wait for a studio session to be free, and like stuff like that. Right now, people can just record a song. So the more they do this stuff, the more it becomes practice. The more practice makes perfect. The more it becomes contagious for them to continue do it. Like, it becomes like a continuous act because they're feeding themselves constantly. You know what I mean? So it's inhale, exhale type of exercise where they can cultivate what they're doing and, really get it polished, man. Like, even if they mess up, they're messing up at their own leisure, so
Yeah.
they got a chance to perfect it. You know what I mean? We didn't really have that chance. We had to pay to mess up even, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah, you had to learn everything that you're going to do in the studio beforehand and hope that when you get into the studio, you remembered everything that you already learned, like at home.
It's hard to polish like that. Like, it's hard to really, sharpen your skills when you have to, when there's segments in between effort and result. You know what I mean? Because even with photography, right now I can take, if I had my camera on me, I can take a picture right now of this screen of you and get it just right by looking at the monitor and making, resetting something because it wasn't right the first time. As opposed to us shooting a 24 roll of 400 speed Ilford film and not knowing what any of the photos look like until we get them developed. You know what I mean? So it's like we got to shoot blind for. And at that time, I was charging. I remember I was charging $100 a roll. So I would shoot rolls of 24, which is unheard of, at $100. When now you can shoot a photo shoot and have 500 pictures in 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at that time, you had to kind of have a concept of, oh, the sun's right here, or I used to shoot with a light meter, so I knew how to set stuff, and but still knowing what the shot came out like wasn't at my leisure just to look at the screen and get it right. I had to kind of go in there with full confidence that I know how to take a picture and do full photo shoots with 10 rolls of film at $100 a piece and not waste this person's $1,000. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then I couldn't get it right until a day later or 2 days later, whenever the photo lab feels like they can have my film developed. And then when I got up there, I have to kind of, so this was a fun exercise because I would take a little notebook and write 1 through 24. So I would like write my frame settings and kind of like know where I'm shooting. So I'm shooting against the sun. There's a shadow casting right here or whatever. So I know I'm shooting this at this shutter speed at this aperture. I know what speed film I'm shooting, and I would write down each frame. And then when I got my contact sheets back, I can kind of look at what I was doing to kind of grade or see what I needed to do different.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to like that's not even a that would blow people's mind if they have to do that right now. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
people will stop doing photography right now if they had to do that.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, it's like I said, it's a gift and a curse. It's a curse because it steps on our feet, but it's a gift to the people who are really doing this for the passion of doing it because it helps them sharpen their blades that much better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
While they're right there, they can sharpen it. They don't have to wait for the mistake. And it's the same as everything, I guess, man. Like yeah, everything, making the music or designing the cover, editing photos, doing whatever. Like some of the stuff that they have in Photoshop trips me out because first of all, I was working on Photoshop with Photoshop 1. Then it was Photoshop 3.0. Then, before even the CS stuff that people thought was new. Been on Photoshop forever, man. But some of the actual camera stuff that I was doing was like burning and dodging photos and stuff like that, which are just basic color correction things in Lightroom and Photoshop now. But knowing how to do that on film or knowing how to blur film using um, extra UV lenses and Vaseline and stuff, and to just to blur photos or make spot blurs or using scratch tint like a window tint, scratch tint in front of the lens just to make different effects. Like doing stuff like that, to me, that was like everything. You know what I mean? And now it's like technology kind of takes away everything or things that are special and make it not as special or fun. It's convenient, but it's not as
Right.
fun. Definitely not as fun, man.
Right. Before we get out of here, is there anything about the Detroit hip hop in regards to the look, the brand, the marketing that maybe we didn't talk about that you want to add to this?
Not so much, man, because I think we cover some. I think Detroit. When I say we, I'm talking about Detroit. I think we cover a lot of bases when it comes to, like we mentioned, like the different genres within Detroit. Like it's
Yeah.
so many different spaces still to this day. Like that wasn't just a mid '90s things. Like right now we still have Super MC and Payroll. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to say that both of them are from Detroit is so far fetched. You know what I'm saying? Or like everybody, man. Like there's so many different people. Like yeah, you got KDZ right here, and then you have Name Tag, or it's so many different sounds. I don't know. I think the one thing would be the support part. I think that has a lot to do with the marketing of it. Like, I don't think the branding is that far off, but branding is kind of obsolete if it's not seen. And for us to be seen, we have to support it and push it. You know what I mean? So I think the marketing part could use a lot of help, man, internally. So with us working with us, um, I think there's a little like there it's segregated, man. Like there's some separations happening in Detroit hip hop that should not exist. Where I look at it as I always call it sides of the fence. So you have the boom bap hip hop backpack side of the fence, then you have the street dope boy side of the fence.
Right.
And I don't think that they need to work separately. I think I think that's also a joint effort, man. Like I think they need to find a way to bridge that gap. It's bridged in certain areas, but the certain areas that it's bridged in, it's not that those aren't really the separated areas. You know what I mean? So when you speak of like Stretch Money doing albums with Nick Speed, they're from the same cloth anyway. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Stretch Money's he's a backpack MC. Like he's a straight MC. So is Big Herc. So is Seven the General. So you know what I mean. But when you speak of some of the other candidates in the race, man, like you got some real dope, like some real to me real dope artists on that side of the fence, like Payroll. Like I think Payroll has like some spectacular charisma. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
And I,
he's
and
one of
that
my favorite MCs from Detroit.
Yeah, and that matches some of the hip hop side of the fence people too. You know what I mean? Producers as well, like not limited to just MCs, but producers as well. And I think some of those like joined efforts can like actually push each other, man. You know what I mean? Like I feel like if the hip hop side of the fence heard about the dope boy side of the fence, they would actually like it. You know what I mean? Like if they gave it a chance, both sides, vice versa. You know what I mean?
I think one of the things with like the hip hop side of things that kind of is off putting is like the style of a lot of the rappers on the street side.
Yeah,
There is, you got like the a lot of the cats from the Doughboy Cash Out crew that they're really good rappers, and
yeah,
I think they
very
would
good.
be able to you know they would sound great with these hip hop cats. But then you have a
Hmm.
lot of the street rappers who have this weird offbeat style that
I
is
love
really off-putting to the hip hop guys. And but at the same time, the hip hop guys think all the street rap guys rap like that.
it. Right. I mean, besides even thinking that, um, that's no reason for separation.
Right,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? If, and I feel like if that's the case, why there should be a producer in place to say, "Yo, let me work with some of your vocals." You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
you know, work with some of these people to the point where okay, now we just tightened up that loose end. Now it's perfect. You know what I mean? Because there's room for all of it. You know what I'm saying? And to be honest, man, a lot of times there's more from what I see, and this is from the outside looking in, man. Like this is me looking at both sides of the fence. A lot of times, what I see, man, is I see more of a cockiness on the backpack side of things. Um, our side, that's the side that I'm from. That's the
Yeah.
side that I was groomed in. That's where all my people are. You know what I'm saying? But I see a lot of us resist or deflect that partnership. You know what I mean? And on the other side, I see a lot of the street cats want to adapt to that partnership, but they don't know how to go about it because we're resistant against it. We're resisting. You know what I'm saying?
And
We
I
don't
think
want
there's
to
a lot
work
of
with.
cats from like the hip hop side of things that feel like there's a circle that they can't break into. Like they think they think they won't be accepted by the street cats.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the street cats are like, I actually do want to work with you.
Yep.
There's like a weird like
Yeah. They're
myth.
just telling. They're telling themselves no.
Yeah, there's like a weird myth where like the hip hop cats are like, oh, I would like to, work with, that circle that like Helava is producing, but they're not gonna let me in.
Oh, that. I mean, both sides of that would be so great, man. Like I would love to hear. Just hearing what Hell of has been doing with Sada Baby, man, is
Oh, dude, yeah, exactly.
amazing. Like, dude, this is so great. This is very, very good. But I would love to hear like I would. There's a number of MCs from our era, from Lush Lounge or wherever, that I would love to hear like collaborate with that side of the fence, and vice versa, man. Like I think I was telling you, man. Like think it'll be nuts, man. And we keep speaking on payroll, but that's like an immediate like
Yeah.
go to in my mind. But just hearing like somebody like a payroll work with like a Black Milk or somebody like that, that'll be phenomenal. Like very good. You know what I mean? Like because we just don't. I don't know, man. A lot of them don't want to accept it because a lot of us we challenge each other with art, with style, patterns, what you coming with. You know what I'm saying? So, and I don't think that side of the fence is that much worried about style, patterns, what you coming with. They just got something to say.
Right.
They want to say it.
They just got a lot of shit to say, you know, whether it makes sense or not, and they want to put it all out.
And it comes out so good, man. I was telling somebody, man, like how loaded T Grizzly is with metaphors. Like T Grizzly has more metaphors than anybody, and it's so interesting to listen to because I'm listening to like man, this is a very witty guy because this stuff is very good. Like he's saying some real good stuff. It's line for line metaphors, and it's very interesting to listen to. And some of these people just got like, I was telling Fat Father day before yesterday about, we was talking about Sada Baby. He asked me, he was like, man, how you feel about he was like, that's pretty dope, man, with Oba Roland, and he signed to Big Sean's label.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's super dope, man. Like that's crazy dope. And we were talking about like people who fit in that kind of zany style, because he has a very zany style too. Sada Baby, but that's not limited to King Gordy.
Yeah.
Who I can very much so hear Sada Baby and King Gordy being equally outlandish on the same song together.
Exactly.
They're just as like, they're equally wild. You know what I mean? Like it's the same person just from a different side of the fence. But yeah, man, I wish it would. That's one thing that I wish would happen, man, because I feel like that'll strengthen the internal marketing effort, and push out the sound a lot more, because it'll have more strength behind it. You know,
and I feel like on the street side of things, they've been doing better with having unity within each other, because there was definitely a time when like the Team Eastside Cats and the Doughboy Cash Out Cats were beefing with each other. Now they're doing songs together, and they're dope as hell.
Yeah, yeah. And that's all it's about to me, man, is if you're doing music, man, like do music, and if this person next to you is doing music, maybe y'all can do music together. And if y'all don't, that doesn't mean that you don't have to, or you have to knock his music down.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like... But that's internally, man. I think that's one of our bigger battles.
Do you think this like sort of chasm that's always existed between the sides of hip hop has been almost like an environmental thing? Because like when you think about like the Detroit area, it's a very segregated area to begin with. You know, Detroit is heavily black, but then you have Dearborn, which is the biggest Arab section outside the Middle East.
Southwest, and
then you have like Hamtramck, which is its own little thing. But then in Detroit, you have the East Side and the West Side, who have classically have their own styles. Mm-hmm. So do you think it's just always been sort of like ingrained into the people of Detroit just to like find a sort of separation to begin with,
There is definitely a separation. For instance, when I was little, that don't even sound cool saying when I was little, but when I was younger, man, like the whole crossing genre or Woodward felt like bad news. You know what I mean? Like going from the West Side to the East Side felt like, ooh, I'm about to go to the East Side. Like, ooh, I'm stepping into the danger zone, but that was the mindset of it. Or don't go to Southwest,
or, cross an 8 Mile. I grew up right off of 8 Mile, and that 8 Mile divide was heavy, yo.
Yeah.
Like that was heavy, the Metro Detroit area was super segregated, and it just, I feel like to a certain extent, and everything that we've done, there's always been segregation that happened. It doesn't matter how much you chop it down, segregation always happened.
Yeah, and that plays into just what we were talking about the United States, like the whole country. So with that being trained behavior with everyone from Detroit, because that is trained behavior. Don't go over here, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. You can't go here. When you're in Dearborn, take the back streets. Don't drive. There's rules for every single area of Detroit, and with that, because we stay away from the east side. When I was younger, we stayed away from the east side. We never knew how the east side operated.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So we couldn't adapt to how they dressed, how they thought, how they, whatever they did, and them vice versa with us. You know what I mean? Like they didn't want to come over to the west side because the west side dudes were bougie or
right.
Or preppy acting or whatever. So we both had reasons for not partying with each other, and that kind of took away from our knowledge of each other, which made us act different. And that's, I feel like that's the reason for that part of it. You know what I mean? I always looked at, and this is crazy because I look at it the same way to this day, and there's no truth behind it, but I just feel this way. I feel like the east side is like, I feel like the sun turns down a little bit on the east side, and it's not as bright. Like when I drive to the east side, I feel like the sun just turned down a little bit. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thought to have. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you know what, man? When I think about that too, it kind of makes sense. I feel like people would say that. Like, it makes kind of sense.
That's the thought I had since I was a kid, man. Like,
it's irrational, but at the same time, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's the dumbest, not making any sense thought ever, man. But it makes sense, and that's and I can't stop myself from thinking that because that's all I ever thought since I was a kid. You know what I mean? And it's probably because as a kid, I probably had that one experience where I may have went to the east side on a low cast day, and it really was shady over there. So that's all I built my concept of the east side off of. And every time I go over there, no matter if the sun is out beaming bright, I feel like it's darker than it is on the west side. It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, but at the same time, it's like, you know what? It kind of makes sense.
Nobody would understand that, man. But yeah, Detroit is definitely segregated, man, and that plays into so much, so much, man. Those dudes have a different behavior, man. Like the east side has a different behavior than the west side. Southwest has a different behavior. Highland Park has a different behavior. Everybody has a different way of doing things.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stuff reflects. The east side rap is liable to be more grimy than the west side rap. The west side rap is liable to be more flaunty. You know what I mean? Yeah. In appearance too. You might see the east side cat might never come out of his corner clothes. He might have quadruple the amount of money in his pocket, but he's still dirty because he's still making that money. And then the west side cat has a fourth of what that person has, but he just looks like he has more. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what we always saw. I always had this idea in my head too that west side girls were more light skinned than east side girls. It was the weirdest stuff. None of this stuff makes sense. None of it makes sense. It's dumb.
But it makes all the sense in the world for like why things are exist in regards to Detroit.
I want to hear some east sider thoughts about the west side. Maybe you need to talk to Marv one and see what some of his thoughts about west siders are.
I'm just gonna have like a segment of like shorts where I just ask like, if you're from the East Side, what do you think about the West Side, and vice versa?
Yeah, all stereotypes. Like
We're just I'm just gonna have like stereotype shorts of like Detroit hip hop and whatnot in Detroit.
yeah, yeah. It's
Okay, before we get out of here, do you have any just final thoughts about Detroit hip hop in general, the history of it, what it's become? What's your final thoughts about Detroit hip hop?
um I'm out of I haven't so as you know, I live in Chicago now. So I've been out of Detroit since 2010, so I can't really speak on the radio part of it.
Yeah,
I don't know what it's doing now fully.
I don't even know what it's doing fully. Like,
But I do feel like that's one of the stronger parts that could have always used a boost,
yeah,
support wise. I feel like that's one of the things. There's certain DJs back in the day like Billy T and stuff who are really heavy into Detroit music, and
yeah,
they kind
man.
of
When I
fought
was
for
like,
it real hard.
when I was like a teenager, before I actually was going out to stuff, it was like people like TJ, who really was like I was learning about some Detroit hip hop through certain guys like him, because they would sneak in to like that Detroit hip hop stuff like on the Rap
Hmm.
Blast and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was the way, man. Like you every now and then you might hear proof searching or something like
Yeah,
that. And it's like,
yeah, like I
oh, this is
remember.
great.
Yeah,
This is great. But yeah, man, I think bridging gaps, man, because I feel like we are so segregated and we're so used to that and accepting to that as being a way that we feel like that's how it's supposed to be. So
yeah,
we don't break out of it. You know what I mean? And just being like, even in Chicago, like like I don't necessarily like being from Detroit. I feel like being from the Detroit music scene at that. I feel like Detroit music, if you grew up with that, then you're automatically spoiled and nothing else matters, right? So I've been to like every place else and I've checked out every place else's music scene, and it's just like, dude, this completely sucks. And it might not suck, but I'm so used to. It's kind of like with Andre 3000 and Big Boy, right?
yeah,
Big Boy is a very dope rapper, but he's standing next to Andre 3000, who's just like doesn't really give you that much of a chance to recognize Big Boy as being the dope rapper that he is.
yeah.
It's like that. Like, so I can go to like a hip hop spot uh downtown Chicago and check out some of the acts, and it's like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And some of their elite artists, to me, I feel like are the everyday artists that we have, like the just pick them off the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like such a we just spoiled, man. Like we got some very very good MCs, but people will never know that because we're not being pushed internally. You know what I mean? Like externally, I feel like that'll always work. Like people love Detroit. You know what I mean? But if they walk in and it's like watching a family fight or a family not getting along. Like you don't want to really hang out for the family dinner. You know what I mean? But if you see that family like pushing each other, you join in. So I feel like if we don't internally strengthen that part of it, then it's just going to keep on being the same repetitive system. And that's like no matter how tight the branding is or the looks and all that stuff, if we're not really standing behind it, man, and collectively pushing it, you know what I mean, every way, it shouldn't be. First of all, it's too many record labels, independent record labels and situations that people have in Detroit when there's shit, you know, there could be one or two powerful machines if all
Yeah.
the monies and not like brains got together and really did it right. There could be like a real system. You know what I mean? We have enough money with the people who's running around throwing money everywhere. We got enough money to, put together a real machine. I feel like that's what Barack was. I feel like Barack was the guiding light. Like that's where people want it to be. That's where Barack was the dream. I feel like it was like Motown. Like, oh shoot, I'm going up to Barack. You know,
Right? Because he was, say what you want to say about RJ. He was actually connected towards other things,
hmm
and was able to get music to places that other people weren't able to get it to.
yep. And the yeah, that's where I don't really always understand like the independent I can do this on my own mindset when it's like, can you? Or do you or are you just able to say I have a record label and get a logo made and then think that you have a business? Like it's it's not, that doesn't work like that. You know what I mean? But
Yes, CEO of the hottest label on the streets.
the hottest label of the block. And that's it. And it's and this is the person who has enough money to actually pair up with five more people like himself and start a real situation, and they just don't think like that. You know what I mean? They don't think like that. They gotta. They don't want to. I don't want to push the K Fresh movement because I have my own movement.
Right.
Is the mindset, instead of just saying, yeah, I'll push the K Fresh movement, and then K Fresh could push my movement, and then we'll just have a movement somewhere down the line together and make it like a big movement.
Yeah.
Like it's so simple to me. Like it's like strength in numbers, but the separation is what they're comfortable with, and that's all they understand. Because the concept of coming together and making it be like a forceful situation just never happens, and it's something that everybody talks about all the time. What we it's the same speech with anything else in the world. Basically, what we need to do is it's like it's like the most hot air speech, man. What we need to do is I don't know, man. The branding, like I said, the branding could be as tight as possible. I still care about it. I see a lot more people caring about it. I just wanted to kind of like share my story and where I came from and my reason for caring about it. Um, Mainly my reason for caring about it mainly comes from the music side of things. I just think the music is the dopest in the world, which means that everything else needed to match. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't think it would have ever made sense for um, a Slum Village or Royce the 5'9" or whoever to have a cassette or CD out with a blank label with handwriting on it. You know what I mean? Or just a whack label for that matter.
Right.
Like I feel like it needs to be represented just as good as the product is. Like the packaging needs to match the product, and that's my whole spiel, man. That's my whole reason for sticking with it for as long as I have, is because
Yeah.
really because the music has been dope and that inspiring. You know what I'm saying? Or else I would have found something else to do. But
and you've done so much good work for Detroit hip hop over all these years. Been a lot of great, very iconic covers for Detroit, for these great Detroit projects that you've been responsible for. So thanks for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge, your experiences, as we continue to document Detroit hip hop history.
yeah, man. Anytime, man. Let me know when you're ready for the West Side, East Side stereotype segments. And
So, if anybody wants to go online to see what see what you do or what you're up to, where can they follow you online?
everything is my name, man. Like I don't really go by an alias or anything like that. So everything is Mario Butterfield. My website is Mario Butterfield. My Instagram is Mario Butterfield. You can just Google Mario Butterfield and you'll probably get what you want. So I'm not, you know, I am who I am, and I am who I am, man. So
Thank you for listening to the Renaissance Soul podcast. Hosted and produced by myself, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. Empowered by Anchor at anchor.fm/Renaissance Soul. Renaissance Soul theme music provided by Steve O. You can find more of his productions at iamsteveo.bandcamp.com, and that's EYEAMSTEVEO.bandcamp.com. Renaissance Soul is available on all streaming platforms. Please rate and review on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. If you want to support Renaissance Soul, please consider pledging via Patreon at patreon.com/freshastheword. Follow Renaissance Soul on social media on Instagram at RenSoul Podcast and on Twitter at RenSoulPod. And join the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/freshastheword. And for more information on Renaissance Soul, visit freshasthepodcast.com. Thank you for listening and your support. Goodbye and good night.
Renaissance Soul.